are these people?
This is, we showed tweets from Maryam Alwan from Left Voice the other day, last episode, when we were talking about what was happening at Columbia. And she wrote an op-ed in the Columbia Spectator, okay, that says, Mahmoud Khalil is my friend, Columbia targeted him, then the U.S. government abducted him. So I thought it was important, again, to bring the perspective from someone who considered him a friend and who knew him well. What the hell happened here? So Maryam says, over the past 3 days, Mahmoud Khalil, a recent graduate of the School of International and Public Affairs, has been kidnapped from his university housing and subjected to political imprisonment despite his permanent residency status. His face was used in a mugshot-like social media graphic posted by the White House Twitter account as a means of threatening every quote-unquote terrorist sympathizer, unquote, college student with the same fate. At the same time, his name has been dragged and muddied by several major right-wing outlets. One need only look at the New York Post's recent headline, quote, "Who is Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University agitator detained by ICE for deportation," quote unquote. As someone who's known Mahmoud for over a year and a half, let me tell you who he really is. He's a Palestinian, a husband, a father-to-be, a dear friend, and a man abducted by the U.S. government for opposing genocide. But Columbia, too, of course, is complicit in what's happened to him. At around the 1-year anniversary of the onset of the genocide, I wrote a personal piece about the visceral reaction I had to listening to the names and ages of Palestinians in Gaza killed by Israel. The vigil was held for nearly a whole month. As time passed, the group of students sitting under the sun all day often dwindled down to almost exclusively us, Palestinian students. It bothered me that reporters would seemingly flock the minute there was a sensational protest headline, but nobody seemed to pay attention to the pain of Palestinians. Not even Spectator bothered to report on it. I felt compelled to document my feelings when reading out the names of people whose fate I could have easily shared had I not been born in the United States. My writing includes the following excerpts, quote, "It took 30 minutes to read 3 double-sided pages out of a heavy and incomplete stack to feel the weight of each corpse on my tongue. The blood drained from my face when we reached someone with the last name Alwan. My throat tightened and I couldn't look down. I was certain I would see a pool of crimson at my feet." I was sitting next to Mahmoud Khalil. The speakers said his first or last name once, 3, 10 times, and then I lost count. He didn't seem to notice the flood of crimson that I saw staining his white Adidas shoes and dripping down the steps. Then, when he took the microphone, his own name rolled off his tongue and he didn't flinch. Eventually, I stopped reacting to the sound of mine, too. I quickly learned that every recognizable name was common. I heard the name of every Palestinian on the steps multiple times, and then I heard the names of some of their loved ones who really were on that list. Mahmoud never flinches. Now, as his name has been picked from a different kind of list, a deportation list created by Columbia affiliates, we're going to get to that in a second, I wonder if he's still as fearless as he was during that time I knew him. I certainly wouldn't blame him if he weren't. Mahmoud had comforted me during countless panic attacks from those induced by pro-Israel protesters aggressively yelling that we were terrorists, to those caused by the increasingly normalized scenes of police violence on our campus. He always made me feel safer when I spotted his smiling face amid a sea of masks and keffiyehs. The comfort of his crinkling eyes inspired me to rip off my own mask in front of a crowd of students at the Sundial in November of 2023. Wow. If I had to describe his demeanor in simple terms, it would be that of a teddy bear. In fact, I imagine him laughing while reading this characterization. The university was familiar with his perpetual kindness too. Mahmoud sacrificed himself to negotiate for divestment with the administration, but they punished him for having the bravery to face a hostile environment head on. On April 30th, 2024, he was suspended in a failed intimidation tactic. They revoked his suspension within the span of a day, endangering him before he got his green card. In an interview with BBC following this scare, Mahmoud downplayed the risk of losing his visa because of his empathy for the victims in Gaza. But for Mahmoud, the ends justify the means. Quote, he says as a Palestinian, he is one of the lucky ones, and it's nothing compared to what people in Gaza are facing, unquote. Never once did he mention that he was born as a Palestinian refugee in Syria and was forced to flee again due to war. Like all my friends, Mahmoud would always remind me to take care of myself and to stop inundating myself with updates about the atrocities in Gaza. Man, we should all listen to that. Never did I think that I would one day have to scour the news about him instead. When I Google his name, I see myself standing to the left of him at a press conference. That day, the day of that conference, we joked about how my hot pink basketball shorts matched his light pink shirt by accident. I looked through my camera roll, finding old videos of a birthday cake in his living room and a dance circle that he led, as per usual, at a Maison Francaise event. The world doesn't have our selfies behind the scenes of media circuses. All that the public has is a distorted image of him, blurred by the lens of anti-Palestinian racism coming from two strongholds of increasingly authoritarian tendencies, Columbia University and the White House. Whenever anything traumatizing happened to the Palestinian community on campus, my first impulse has been to write op-eds, unfinished drafts of op-eds, and frequent impassioned emails to the administration. It feels futile to write now, and as I sit and worry about the whereabouts and safety of my friend, but all I have are my words, and words I've come to learn are powerful. Yes, they are. After all, words prompted the federal government to target Mahmoud for standing against the genocide of his people. The university has yet to condemn the fact that the U.S. government is actively attempting to deprive Mahmoud's future child from meeting their extraordinary father. But, of course, this is the same institution that has yet to explicitly condemn a single act of violence or discrimination against Palestinians since October 7, 2023. With this context in mind, the sudden campaign against Mahmoud is not nearly as unprecedented as it seems. In just a week leading up to Mahmoud's abduction, Palestinian students have had to deal with Columbia/Barnard Hillel and Columbia School of International and Public Affairs Dean welcoming former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who played a hand in the massacre of over 100 Lebanese civilians and said that Palestinian children are terrorists who should be shot. We've had to deal with leaked messages from the very Columbia affiliates who claim to need protesters like Mahmoud deported in order to feel safe, saying, quote, the powers that be need to squash them like roaches. Ignoring roaches in one's house is possible, but who wants to live that way, unquote. We've had to deal with fresh trauma from a potentially fabricated bomb threat, likely potentially fabricated bomb threat, and police brutality on our campus. And now we're dealing with the unimaginable, an invaluable member of our community ripped away after a systematic pro-deportation doxing campaign. On March 7th, the day before Mahmoud was taken, I wrote on my private Instagram story, quote, Zionists are priming to manufacture consent for the targeting of Mahmoud, unquote, because of how much canary mission, an illegitimate doxing database that has become anti-Palestinian hit list, and other faculty, student, and alumni-based doxing accounts were posting about him. There were at least 12 separate coordinated posts from business school assistant professor Shai Davidai and Victor Muslin, SEAS 82, who are associated with the Columbia-specific hit list of, quote, documenting Jew hatred. And again, we're going to get to that in a little bit too. affiliated with Betar USA, who we've talked about with Gen X Girl, 1994. In these repeated calls for Mahmoud's deportation, the posters tagged Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who, according to an ex-post, I can't stand saying that, an ex-post by Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, later personally signed off on revoking Mahmoud's green card for allegedly threatening American foreign policy interests. It's insane. These same Columbia faculty members began priming the public to associate the name Mahmoud Khalil with agitator, foreign, and pro-Hamas, quote-unquote, the exact same terminology used in President Trump's Monday statement. Go figure. While writing this op-ed, I found out that this flood of online harassment directly caused Mahmoud to have an instinctual feeling of being in imminent danger. He emailed University President Katrina Armstrong for help after public safety singled him out to remove him from campus on March 6th. She, of course, ignored his final plea, quote, if I'm unwelcome on Columbia campus, please let me know through the right channels, unquote. Columbia never once stood up for us, the very students it chose to admit, and who once dreamed of coming here. It never sanctioned Shy David I beyond a suspension from the Morningside campus, despite his daily and systematic maligning of pro-Palestinian students since October 2023. Disgusting. Or anyone else for that matter. Instead, they doubled down on slandering the fight for our people to live as anti-Semitic, as if Palestinians aren't Semites. The administration put Mahmoud under threat by withholding his transcript in an Office Institutional Equity investigation without individualized evidence, of course, paving the way for his targeting by the federal government. On March 10th, The Forward, which is a Jewish newspaper, reported that Ross Glick, the former executive director of Betar, a group that threatens and openly commits violence against Palestinians in the United States, fed Mahmoud's name directly to the government, with Glick claiming that Columbia's Board of Trustees did the same. The guise of quote-unquote combating anti-Semitism on college campuses has revealed itself to be the oil in the gears of harming and expelling Palestinians of systemic bigotry. Disingenuously feeling unsafe due to protests while paradoxically showing up to all of them in order to record and harass protesters is endangering racist fascism. Engendering racist fascism. The battle over the narrative of Zionism in the United States has now officially reached a breaking point for our own constitutional rights. Right-wing news outlets have already contributed to smearing Mahmoud with anti-Palestinian racism, no surprise, citing the fact that he worked for the United Nations and that he's been seen, quote, taking part in dance circles, unquote, interviewing completely in Arabic, those foreigners, or, quote, draped in a keffiyeh headscarf. Snowflakes. This symbol of Palestinian identity is regularly defiled by Zionist students and faculty. Meanwhile, these same pro-Israel affiliates amplify doxing databases that are proudly taking credit for dictating Mahmoud's fate with their lies, and even filing affidavits against him in court. In the meantime, they're already beginning to seek out new targets. Manufacturing consent to genocide has officially led to manufacturing consent to violence against dissenting students. When we normalize daily scenes of indiscriminate bombardment in Gaza, we also inherently normalize the sight of dozens of militarized riot cops in our learning environment. When we normalize the scenes of forced displacement and administrative detention in the West Bank, we likewise normalized the indefinite abduction of legal permanent residents on the basis of Palestinian identity and political opinion. The one person who could calm me down at the height of this stress is Mahmoud himself. But he is all the way in a notoriously abusive immigration and customs enforcement facility in Louisiana, alone. I can only imagine what he's experiencing in prolonged federal confinement right now. As Columbia students who know and love Mahmoud, it's our duty to ensure that his suffering is not in vain. Libelous doxing and arbitrary disciplinary targeting do not just cause psychological harm, they are also physically dangerous. The engines of repression, from low library to Congress to the White House, are actively attempting to manufacture consent for the detention and potential deportation of Mahmoud. And oh yeah, they certainly are. It is up to the entire student body to stop them. It is up to us to humanize him again, as I am working to do with Maryam right here. And it is up to us to humanize the Palestinian people as a whole the way he would want. I want to be able to see my friend again. I want to have dinner at his apartment the way I was supposed to before he was taken. I want to watch him become the incredible father I know he will next month. And I want all of us to be able to tell him that we overcame our fear to fight for him the way he always did for everyone around him. When he comes back, he needs to know, in trying to tear him down, Colombia and the U.S. government have only made him a historic legend in the struggle not only for Palestinian rights, but the rights of us all. That's, wow, powerful. Certainly a biased opinion for sure. And really good. Why the fuck is he in Louisiana? That's a great question, Vicky. We're going to get to that in a minute. Steve Gill, they're doxing his pregnant American wife. That's absolutely true. It's disgusting. It's disgraceful. This man should be free. It's horrible. We're going to talk about what happened with the Rockfin channels later on tonight, but I want to continue with what's happening here at Columbia, because there's a lot more that's at play here, because not only did they detain and illegally kidnap Mahmoud, all right, they also, in a shocking move, Columbia University fires union president one day before contract negotiations begin in a further crackdown on free speech. Why is this a crackdown on free speech? In the latest assault, this is from the UAW, by the way, they're unionized at Columbia. All right, so they're unionized, they're union president, they're affiliated with UAW. In the latest assault on First Amendment rights, Columbia University has expelled and fired Grant Minor, president of UAW Local 2710, which represents thousands of Columbia student workers. The firing comes one day before the contract negotiations were set to begin to open with the university. The shocking move is part of a wave of crackdowns on free speech against students who've spoken out and protested for peace and against the war on Gaza. Massacre. As the UAW has emphasized, the assault on First Amendment rights being jointly committed by the federal government and Columbia University are an attack on all workers who dare to protest, speak out, or exercise their freedom of association under the U.S. Constitution. It is no accident that this comes days after the federal government froze Columbia's funding and threatened to pull funding from 60 other universities across the country. It's no accident that this firing has occurred the day before contract negotiations begin. It's no accident that the university is targeting a union leader whose local went on strike in the last round of bargaining. It's no accident that this is happening at Columbia University, where student workers won the right to collective bargaining back in 2016. Trade unionists everywhere, defenders of the Constitution, of freedom of speech, of academic freedom, and of the right to free association, should be appalled and disgusted by the behavior of Columbia University and should take it for the clear signal it is. If they can come for graduate workers, if they can arrest, deport, expel, or imprison union leaders and activists for their protected political speech, yes, they're including Mahmoud in that statement, then they can come for you too. For your contract, for your paycheck, for your family, and for your rights. And I don't always align with the UAW on a lot of stuff, but I got to say they're right on this one. There's a lot of people I don't align with that have this one right, okay, in a lot of cases. All right, this is draconian. This is authoritarian. This is like Kafkaesque. And then I lean towards Mondoweiss. I always lean towards Indie Media Award honoree Mondoweiss for what's going on in Palestine and what's going on with the U.S. government and Israel's assault on Palestinian livelihood and on equality for Palestinians. And just I mean, they say Israel has the right to exist. Well, Palestinians have the right to exist. And no country, by the way, has the right to exist. No country. Not England, not France, not Russia, not anyone. No country has the right to exist. People have the right to exist. Michael Arria, one of the co-founders of Mondoweiss Indie Media Award honoree, says on Wednesday, Mahmoud Khalil will remain detained in Louisiana following a brief court hearing. What? In a hearing in New York City on Wednesday, Mahmoud Khalil's attorney said they have not been allowed to have contact with him since his detention. Meanwhile, the Trump administration's rationale for detaining him continues to change. Now, let's remember that this man has been detained without charges and now, quote unquote, disappeared. I thought they didn't do that here. Mahmoud Khalil will continue to be detained at an ICE facility in Louisiana following a brief hearing in New York City on Wednesday morning. In response to a habeas corpus petition and a request, thanks Obama, and a request to have him transferred back to New York where he was arrested, federal judge Jesse Furman called for more briefs from Khalil's lawyers and the U.S. government, because of course they did. Trump attorneys informed the court that they will submit a motion to transfer or dismiss Khalil's habeas corpus petition as they view New York as an improper venue for the case, and they don't believe it has any jurisdiction. What? Okay. Furman also ordered Khalil to be allowed to communicate with his counsel over the course of the next 2 days as they prepare to meet legal deadlines. And what happens if they don't? Khalil's attorneys told the judge that they've been unable to speak with their client at all. Quote, "We literally have not been able to confer with our client once since he was taken off the street of New York and taken 1,000 miles away to Louisiana," one of his lawyers, Ramzi Qasem, told Furman. "It's hard for us to continue the work we would normally, the way we would normally," he added. Khalil did not appear in court by video or phone during the hearing, which saw a massive crowd of supporters gather outside, and further led to questions as to where he was and what was happening to him.
Who are these people?
And what condition he was in. Thank you to whoever that was. And we'll find out in a second. Sheza Abushi Dalal, who's another one of Khalil's attorneys, read a statement from Khalil's pregnant wife. Quote, "My husband was kidnapped from our home, and it's shameful that the United States government continues to hold him because he stood for the rights and lives of his people," it read. Quote, "I demand his immediate release and return to our family. His disappearance has devastated our lives, naturally." Last week, the DHS detained Khalil over his participation in the Gaza solidarity protests at Columbia University's campus last spring. The arrest took place despite the fact that Khalil is a permanent U.S. resident with a current green card. And we're going to get to the details of that in a little bit. During his arrest, ICE agents informed him that it had been revoked by the U.S. government along with his student visa. The Trump administration celebrated Khalil's detention across social media. Quote, "This is the first arrest of many to come," wrote President Trump in a Truth Social post. Quote, "We know there are more students at Columbia and other universities across the country who have engaged in pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, anti-American activity, and the Trump administration will not tolerate it. Many are not students, they're paid agitators."
Thank you very much. That's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, fuck off. On Monday, Judge Furman temporarily blocked Khalil from being deported and ordered him to remain in the U.S. in order to, quote, preserve the judge's jurisdiction, unquote. An early statement from Secretary of State Marco Rubio suggested that Khalil would be prosecuted under anti-terrorism laws for his alleged support of Hamas, but the government has since revealed that it arrested him using a provision from the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA. Quote, any alien, I love the dehumanizing terminology, whose presence or activities in the United States the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States is deportable, reads that provision. That's insane. Sources with knowledge of the matter told the New York Times that, quote, Mr. Rubio's argument is that the United States has a foreign policy of combating anti-Semitism around the world, and that this would undermine this policy objective to tolerate Mr. Khalil's continued presence in the United States? Okay. Sure. Ironically, as Andrew Silverstein notes in the foreword, this same INA provision was used to target Holocaust survivors suspected of being Soviet agents during the 1950s. So we're literally getting back to McCarthyism. Yeah. Quote, the First Amendment protects the right of the people to criticize the government, its policies, and foreign governments like Israel. Pyramid. Immigration attorney Eric Lee told Mondoweiss that's true. The claim that pro-Palestinian speech equates to terrorism, quote unquote, is nothing more than a pretext and a lie. Agreed. There is no lawful basis whatsoever for these actions. Not only does it violate the free speech rights of non-citizens, it also violates the rights of all U.S. citizens, he continued. The First Amendment not only guarantees the right to speak, it guarantees the right to listen. Citizens have the right to listen to the anti-government or pro-Palestinian views of their non-citizen friends, co-workers, and colleagues, unquote. It's kind of like the freedom from religion, just like freedom of religion is like freedom from religion, which I am a big believer of as well. And a lot of this, by the way, is religious persecution. This is because he is Muslim that he is being targeted. So freedom from religion is also part of this. Khalil's detention has been condemned by human rights groups, activists, and lawmakers, and me too. Quote, Khalil's constitutional rights have been violated. He's been denied meaningful access to counsel and any visitation from his family. This is absolutely unacceptable and illegal, reads a statement to DHS Secretary Kristi Noem from Representative Rashida Tlaib and 13 other House members. And then she shot a dog. Not Rashida, no. Quote, the arrest, and here's the strongly worded letter that doesn't mean anything. The arrest, detention, and attempted deportation of a prominent Palestinian human rights activist for his constitutionally protected activity that the administration disagrees with is not only patently unlawful, it's a further dangerous step into modern-day McCarthyist repression. Wow, I thought I said that before earlier. The courts must stop this lawlessness before this chilling form of repression expands further, said the Center for Constitutional Rights legal director, Baher Azmi, in a statement. But both the defense and prosecution will submit a joint letter to Judge Furman on Friday explaining their further plans for arguments in the case. Furman. Is it me, or is Judge Furman also the judge that was the case in the Chevron story with Donziger? I could be wrong. I could be just making shit up. That name sounds very familiar. But there was another story out of Mondoweiss, also out of Michael Arria 2 days later. Again, Indie Media Award honorees. Best of the best. Check out indiemediaawards.substack.com for a list of all the best outlets, writers, journalists, live streamers, podcasters, video creators, independent that there are. Now, Colombia has decided that it wants to expel student protesters. It's fired its union president amid ICE raids. So I think we mentioned ICE raids, but we're going to get a little bit deeper into that here. Columbia University issued suspensions, expulsions, and temporary degree revocations to students connected to the April 2024 occupation of Hamilton Hall, aka Hinds Hall, as ICE agents reportedly arrested a second Palestinian Columbia student on Friday. So, this is, of course, the front of Columbia University, ground zero right now for the free speech movement in the United States. On Thursday, Columbia University issued suspensions, expulsions, and temporary degree revocations, but no refunds on their tuition, of course, because they're temporary degree revocations. That's how they do this. It could be permanent, but they'll just say it's temporary and hold on to the money. To a number of students connected to the April 2024 occupation of the school's Hamilton Hall, which again was renamed Hinds Hall. The announcement from the University Judicial Board came on the same day as a campus ICE raid with DHS agents executing search warrants on 2 Columbia University residences. Yeah, that's cool. Quote, I'm writing heartbroken to inform you that we had federal agents from the DHS in 2 university residences tonight, Interim President Dr. Katrina Armstrong told students and staff in an email. And I actually have a copy of that email here. On Friday, DHS officials said that they had announced another student protester who had allegedly overstayed her visa. She was identified as Leka Cordia, a Palestinian from the occupied West Bank. Quote, again, Christy Nome, right before she shot another dog, it's a privilege to be granted a visa to live and study in the United States of America. When you advocate for violence and terrorism, that privilege should be revoked, and you should not be in this country. Except she never advocated for violence or terrorism. That's just made up bullshit that you can't prove. And tweets don't count. Additionally, the school expelled and fined Grant Minor, as we mentioned before, president of the UAW Local 2710. Less than a week ago, Columbia graduate Mahmoud Khalil was arrested by ICE agents for his involvement in last spring's Gaza protests. He is currently being detained in Louisiana, while Trump administration attempts to deport him in what legal advocates say is an egregious violation of the First Amendment. Just days before the arrest, Columbia published a new protocol reversing the school's previous status as a sanctuary campus status, allowing ICE access to the school without a warrant in some circumstances. How convenient. Khalil and 7 other Columbia students are now suing the university, Mahmoud Khalil, to block the school from handing over private disciplinary records to Congress. Crazy. So here we go with a Trump crackdown. Khalil's arrest and the arrival of ICE agents on college campuses is part of the Trump administration's federal crackdown on the U.S. Palestine movement. And he said he was going to do this while he was running. So this is no surprise. All right. He said, one thing I do is any student that protests, I throw them out of the country. You know, there are a lot of foreign students. As soon as they hear that, they're going to behave. He told a group of pro-Israel donors on the presidential campaign trail, like I said. Shortly after arriving at the White House, Trump issued several executive orders aimed at stifling protest on campus, including one that seeks to cancel the visas of foreign students who participated in them. Quote, to all resident aliens, like we said, is just disgusting, dehumanizing language, who joined in the pro-jihadist protests, which is insane also. We put you on notice. Come 2025, we will find you and we will deport you, said Trump in a fact sheet released alongside the executive order. Quote, I will also quickly cancel the student visas of Hamas sympathizers on college campuses, which have been infested with radicalism like never before. Because anybody that wants Israel to stop murdering children and dropping bombs indiscriminately on innocent people in Gaza and the West Bank are now considered Hamas sympathizers, according to Trump. This is a serious problem because every single person watching this is now included in that description, I would guess. And if not, fuck off. Because you suck Israel's dick, so fuck off. Axios, no fan of theirs, has reported that the State Department will use AI as a tool to revoke the visas of foreign students who appear quote-unquote pro-Hamas. Yeah, I can't see that persecuting people at all. Can you? Last week, scholar Helia Dugades was placed on administrative leave by Yale Law School after an AI-generated article falsely accused her of being a quote-unquote terrorist over her connections to Palestine groups. And again, we've reported on this as far back as a year ago, where Google Gemini was smearing Matt Taibbi and making up fake articles about things that he had not written, but attributed that to him, controversies that he had not caused, that attributed that to him, disgusting smears that there's no way to refute because nobody's contesting the AI. Grok is doing the same stuff, by the way. They're running cover for a guy by the name of Alexander Muse, who is the CTO of the O'Keefe Media Group, OMG. So we know that James O'Keefe is an op. Let me go back to a single. James O'Keefe is a scumbag political, quote-unquote, gotcha op, okay, that got thrown out of his original organization, started a new one because he's a piece of shit, has been sued multiple times, and has no journalistic integrity whatsoever. He's paid people to set up scenarios that made it look like a certain organization did a certain thing, then came out with a big scandal only to have it unravel later on. Kind of like what Israel does over and over again. So maybe they're using his playbook or he's using theirs, or they're all in friendly cahoots. Let's just say that. So what a surprise. They're using the same kind of tactics. All right. But like we said, Thursday also saw the Trump administration send a letter to Columbia detailing a series of steps that the university could take in order to reverse the government's recent cancellation of roughly $400 million in federal funds, which they don't need anyway because they've got multi-billion-dollar endowments. They're Ivy League. The demands included a mask ban, which is crazy, action on anti-Zionist discrimination, which is also crazy because that is a horrible ideology, and the suspension of the students involved in the Hamilton Hall occupation. Quote, we expect your immediate compliance, read the letter. That's not authoritarian or anything. After Khalil's arrest, Columbia's journalism school dean Jelani Cobb reportedly told a group of students to refrain from posting about the Middle East on their social media page. When a Palestinian student questioned the school acquiescing to Trump, Cobb told them, quote, nobody can protect you. These are dangerous times. If you were accepted to Columbia University, don't come here, tweeted a student. This school will ruin your life for a McChicken and a nice tweet from Donald Trump, unquote. Again, that is Mondoweiss Indie Media Award honoree Michael Arria. Now, getting into exactly what happened with the email that went out and 2 DHS agents being allowed on campus, apparently because they lifted the sanctuary campus designation. Our friend Gen X Girl 1994 states here, the administration at Columbia needs to be fired along with the Board of Trustees. If you are a Zionist, you have no business leading anything in America. You have proven for 18 months that you're foreign agents of Israel and you work to attack the Constitution. So here's the email from the Columbia admin. DHS agents were in 2 university residences tonight with 2 warrants. And here actually literally is the email. And some of it's actually covered up. Sorry about that. And we don't have to read the whole thing. It's long and drawn out. But they're literally making like support and counseling available if you've been traumatized by even knowing that there were DHS agents on campus. Of course, that's for the Zionist students, not for the pro-Palestinian students that are actually going to be traumatized by all of this because we live in dystopian hell. All right. How soon until a Star of David patch on your sleeve or over your door signifies you're loyal to the regime? I'm exaggerating, but is it really that unlikely? No. Unfortunately, no. And finally, Alan McLeod, more people should know that this is happening. With regard to Mahmoud Khalil, pro-Israel group says it has a quote-unquote deportation list and has sent thousands of names to Trump officials for deportation. And again, we mentioned Ross Glick and Betar US. In my one-on-one with Gen X Girl, we detailed in very painstakingly excruciating detail about how Betar US is a subset of the Zionists of America. They are aligned also with a terrorist organization in the U.S. I can't remember the name of that organization now, but I mean, just rabid. You know, they advocate for the murder of Palestinian people. And oh yeah, by the way, I know Reef and Colin covered this Wednesday night. A professor at the center of the Columbia University scandal is also a former military intelligence officer. And again, watch Reef and Colin's footage from Wednesday night. I believe that's going to be a clip coming out this week if it's not already out. And finally, I wanted to stop to finish this segment out with a meme. And of course, now it's getting cut off, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this. You know what? Let me do this. Slideshow off. Hey, there we go. Now you can see the rest of my screen. There we go. So here's what Trump's really not about. America first, free speech, no more wars, no foreign aid. Ron Paul and Massey, I'm not really for them either. All right. JFK and MLK files. Yeah, no thanks. No Epstein files. But here's what he is for. Israel first, deporting dissent, war with Iran and more tax dollars to Bibi, primary Massey and no JFK and MLK files. And of course, talking about Epstein is now considered anti-Semitic because, as Sean the Accord Lord says, I hate this timeline. As do we all, my friend, as do we all. We definitely get demonetized off of YouTube for that. So if you are of means and able to support, as Colin says, take care of your family, take care of your friends, take care of yourselves. But if you're able and you find a couple of bucks between the couch, between the cushions of the couch, or wherever you can find a couple of bucks, Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. And then you can also subscribe for free over at innnewsletter.com and get daily updates about what's happening at the network. All the live streams, all the articles, all of the clip premieres that are happening throughout that day are published at 5:45 p.m. Eastern, usually on average. We'll almost certainly be censored for that as well. So if you are able to and a means, take care of your family, take care of yourselves, take care of your friends. But take care of INN and fund the independent media you want to see. Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. And you can also do it at innnewsletter.com monthly or annually, but please do it at one of the other 3 places instead. Support independent media because we need it more than ever.
Can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen? 50,000 died And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. No, I play civil when all these dead won't make you listen. What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? God, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause now that I can see the cause so clearly. See, I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me.